My name is Akila, and this is the Black Men's Redemption. In this podcast, we talk with real Black men on issues that affect Black men on a whole. Let the healing begin.
Welcome back to the Black Men's Redemption Season 3. We're here at episode 2 with my brother Sankofa Nyame. Sankofa, welcome back to the space. Thank you for coming again.
It's a joy to be back again, you know?
Excellent, excellent. So this season is a pretty heavy season. Most of our seasons are kind of heavy, but this one is kind of particularly heavy. We're here talking about the hypersexuality of Black men and Black boys and where that stems from. And, you know, does an adjustment need to be made? And if an adjustment needs to be made, how do we make that adjustment? So I guess just jumping straight into it, I guess my first question is, how does the hypersexualization of Black boys start?
I think it started at a young age, and it's different for everybody, you know? I can't speak on anybody else's experience. I could probably only speak on my experience and some of my peers, you know, because we were exposed at a very young age. For me, around like 6 years old, you know, and I was exposed through a family member, you know, to pornography, you know what I'm saying, being exposed to it, very young age. But other young boys in my class, you know, at school and in my community around me was also exposed to it through different things, whether it be porn, whether it be they caught someone, a family member, and then now it's in their psyche or, you know, whatever else. But those are the ways that I know, you know, and that was at the time that I was exposed.
That seems to be the trend in having these discussions that, you know, it kind of starts with some sort of gateway thing, usually pornography. And then from like a young age, and I'm startled at the fact that it's like 6 and 5, and these people are telling me.
Right.
I guess my second question would be, like, it's usually introduced through an older man or an older boy. Why do you think that's normalized? You know, why does it almost seem like it's a rites of passage? All right, it's time to brook out my little brother or whatever.
I was sitting with this, you know, knowing that this topic was coming. I've been sitting with this and I don't fully understand why. I think that the lack of other rites of passages. As a people, we don't have other rites of passages, you know, so I feel that sexuality becomes the standing. It's like, okay, from the time that you can first take a girl, you know what I'm saying, that's when you're a man versus responsibility. Because the crazy thing is, even though sex is the rites of passage, it's not always even coupled with sexual responsibility, which is very interesting when you think about it, or sexual discipline, you know. But I think it's the lack of a rites of passage that makes it the standing, you know, for that. Yeah.
So like there's less markers of manhood, so that almost seems to be the most obvious thing.
Right. Exactly. Right. That's the transition where you consider to be a man. But it's crazy is it's even pushed earlier. Like I say, I was 6 at the time that I was shown. Me and my brother was shown, my older brother, and he is 4 years older than me. So he was only 10, you know, so it was like we were exposed and primed, even groomed, you know, for it at a much younger age, you know, than even we would be experiencing, you know, and I don't know the reason why. I don't know the reason why. I can't tell you, you know, but it's more common than it should be, you know.
such a sad thing because, I myself, you probably know already, I have a little brother and he's 7 years younger than me. And
Mm,
I'm so protective of him. And granted, like we grew up in a family in which, we were very not exposed to things, but also our family did create a space where like you can come and talk to our parents about anything. Um,
right.
and I realized in talking to a lot of my male peers that that is really not the case. My brother is very privileged and very special, and it just breaks my heart a little bit. No, not a little bit. It
Mm,
breaks my heart a lot. Gosh,
mm,
I just want to protect them boys. Let them be
yeah.
boys.
Right. Yeah. Children. And you know what? That's actually a segue, I would say. I think not only are we hypersexualized as young boys, we are um, parentified and adultified
Mm-hmm.
way too early. I think that's what it was. The biggest thing for me as a youth growing up was the pressure to be a man before I was even able to fully be a boy and a child. That I think is really what makes that, because when you see a young boy and he's already a man, quote unquote, at 6, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, it's not hard to introduce man and adult things to him way before his time. It's a side note, but I just want to throw that in there.
That's a great segue. The way that our young boys, and let's call them what they are, our young
Mm-hmm.
boys
Boys, yes.
being adultified. And that segues into my next point, a point that really kind of, as I said, I have a younger brother, makes me mad a lot of times. But these women, these
Mm-hmm.
grown ass women,
Mm-hmm.
messing around with these little boys, and it's not even viewed the same way as when a grown man messes with a little girl. When a grown man messes with a little girl, she's more protected in a sense. Whereas
Right.
I guess through the adultification of young boys in particular, or the way that young boys are sexualized and
Mm-hmm.
are viewed to have sexual maturity younger. Um, yeah, it's common. It's so commonplace. Like again, my peers are telling me, "Oh yeah, they had their first time with a grown woman, 18 years older, 18 and older, sorry, at the age of like
Mm-hmm.
12." And I'm like, in my mind, I'm sitting here like, big woman things, what are you looking at a little boy for? 12 years old. I'm looking at my little brother at 12 years old. What is there that he has to offer? I do not understand it. I'd love to hear,
Mm-hmm.
what your view is of these women, this and statutory rape of little boys.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a sort of double standard. It's a double standard. I think that in general, society doesn't look at women as capable of certain harm and certain destruction in general. Same way how a man might be held more accountable for domestic violence, whereas a woman could do the same thing and it's not really as taken as serious, or any type of abuse for that matter. And I think that sexual abuse falls under that umbrella. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think that is disgusting. You know what I'm saying? Just as it is, in reverse. You know what I'm saying? Because you're taking advantage of a young boy who does not know what he's all the way engaging with. You know what I'm saying? And the double standard of it all excites the young boy. You know what I'm saying? Because it's pushed on you. That okay, you're supposed to just get a girl. You know what I'm saying? Have sex. I'm trying not to be explicit in my words, but you get what I say still.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's the standard. That's the thing that's pushed forward. That's the expectation. So within that, it's not so much a negative thing in the boy's mind where he even understands what's going on. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't make it any less bad. You know?
It's a
Yeah.
real hard thing. And I mean, I seek to understand it, and I really wonder if it I believe it must be a power dynamic, because it seems like sexually based offenses are sort of it's a sick power trip in a way.
Mm.
I truly believe when it's woman as the aggressor to this young boy, it's because she wants to control it. She wants to be in a situation where she's controlling the outcome.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It just breaks my heart. And it's not taken seriously. Because,
Right.
as I said, when it's a little girl, everybody's up in arms. But when it's a little boy, oh, yeah, big man now, or you take that, oh, you chop down big tree and all type of things. Again, adultification. This is not a big man. This is a 12-year-old boy who should be playing with trucks and making vroom vroom. He's still making vroom vroom noises when he's walking because he's pretending he's driving a truck. How are you going to look at him and decide you want to take that on? How that makes sense?
Right.
And then we do not call the women what they are. We do not call them pedophiles. They say, oh, she's just like a young thing. The language itself is dismissive. And it does not protect the boys. That's crazy. That's crazy. But then another question. And it kind of links back to the whole Gallus conversation we were having last season.
Yeah.
Why are boys praised? Why are they praised for losing their virginity and running hog wild through the daffodils and everything? Why are they praised for being promiscuous? Why are they praised for losing their virginity?
I think it come back again to the lack of rites of passage. You know what I'm saying? When there's nothing else in place for us to say this is what makes you a man. If there's nothing else, no other type of rights, it just becomes filled in with sex, not only just sex, but with smoking, with drinking, adult things, things that you shouldn't really experience until much later in life. Becomes the standing, the placeholder, for the actual rites of passage that really need to take place. So I would say that's why. I guess because with sex, the potential is that you could make a child. So if you're able to make a child, even if you're not taught to take care of it, or if you're not programmed or conditioned to take care of it, you being able to make it means, okay, you become not just a little boy, but you become a father. So from that, that's where the rites of passage element of it come in.
That's crazy. Because I also think about young fathers when they're like teenagers and they become fathers. It's even, again, the language around it is very different. Even if it's his little high school sweetheart, she could be the same age as him, but the language around him becoming a father is like, oh, good job type of thing. Whereas when she becomes a mother at 15 or whatever, it's like, oh gosh, you ruined your life. But there's not that for the boy. Again, adultification. I guess that's the theme of hypersexuality, is that it's about making an adult of the boy before his time.
Right.
And where are the roots of this, do you think? I personally think it's slavery, because again, when you think about slavery, very short lifespan, like 30 was probably old.
Right. I would also say that, and it's just making me think about I think a lot of the sexual patterns that we follow and face and deal with today come from that time period. But, it's also making me think that I see how certain things that happen in that time are happening today, because I think about, and trigger warning for those listening, and this is where it gets really deep, because every time we talk about slavery, it gets deep. I think about the breeding farms, and you're taking a boy from he's as young to be able to reproduce, he's reproducing, he's being forced to reproduce. You see it? So I feel like that same pattern is what we're dealing with now today. You know, the same thing from your 12, but it even start now at earlier ages because the exposure, you know, through technology, through TV, through media, you know, everything that we see is sexualized. You know what I mean? So it's easy to put it out there and put it in people's face, you know what I'm saying, to where the children can see there's no distinction, there's no, you know, when I was young, you know, we used to cover our eyes, you know, at certain things, you know.
Yeah.
There's none of that now, you know. It's just right there in your face. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I feel like the roots just have to be slavery. It has to be, you know, those same patterns and dynamics that happened in that time happening now.
That does resonate. That resonates, especially the whole breeding farms thing, man. Jeez, that's unfortunately, I feel like, as you said, lack of rites of passage for boys means that it's almost as if we fall back on the more recent history. Yeah. So was it you I was telling the last season? Have you heard the term gelding?
One more time?
Have you heard the term gelding here in Jamaica?
Yelling, nah, I mean, I hear that.
So I find it stupid personally, but they will jeer a man who does not reach a certain age, probably like his early 20s, and doesn't have a child yet. Very jeering. So every Father's Day, they're like, oh, you don't have no picnic yet? Hand the gelding truck. And it seems like there's a lot of social pressure to have sex, to have children, but there's not as lot to mind the children, like in other than the financial minding of the children, you know. But there's a lot of emphasis on the breeding and the getting of children and the sex. How do you, as a man, withstand the social pressures that are telling you to be so promiscuous? Even as a young man, like even my brother, I wonder how can he, because so far he's doing a good job, how can he withstand the social pressures that are out there?
I'm going to speak on myself and then I'm going to take what I say and apply it to the younger brothers. You know, people have the things that they want to say, you know, and they have the pressure that they want to put on your life. But at the end of the day, and this goes for all type of pressure, you know, I have to live with my own decision. You know what I mean? You could tell me, say, I have to have children, I have to have, you know, a whole big family, whatever, but I'm the one who have to pay for that family, you know? I'm the one who have to take care of them. I'm going to be the one who have to get them up, you know, to go to school. I'm the one who's going to have to look after them 24/7. You know what I'm saying? So with that, it's on my personal time. It's on me, you know, and I feel the same way for all the younger brothers, you know, because it's easy to get lost in the sea, you know, the whole other world, all the Babylon confusion. It's easy to get lost in that, but you have to have principles, you know what I mean? And you have to know what you want to build in life. A lot of the times, it's easy to get distracted by sex. Not only is it easy to get distracted, it's easy for your purpose and your mission in life to get derailed, you know, just by all it takes is one time, you know, when you have a child. All it takes is one time with the wrong person and you have a disease. You know what I mean? So it's just to be mindful, you know, it's to be mindful of the consequences that come with every action. Don't think about what someone wants to tell you to do in your life because that's not their life. Each person have their own life to live, you know what I'm saying? So you have to know the consequences that come with every action in your life and you have to know what you want out of life. What consequences do you want to make from your own action? Because everybody can say everything that they want to say, but you are the one at the end of the day who has to live with the decision that you make.
That is so
You
true.
know, so
That is.
yeah.
I think everybody. When I was like 17, I took this course put on by the took a day class took on by the put on by like the Ministry of Tourism in Morant Bay when I was living in St. Thomas. You know, talking about tourism, of course, one of the things that they cover is um, sex tourism, which of course, as you know, happens in especially third world countries. Rich people, or not even rich people, first world people coming to a third world country, developing country, and doing the things that they would not be able to do in their country, in our countries, with our young people, boys and girls. And
Right.
I think everybody should take that class because a few years later, my brother took that class. He says, nope,
Mm.
nope, that's not for
Hmm.
me. And
Right.
it's real because you do see it focused more on, sexually transmitted diseases. But of course, as you said, seeing the consequences without having to go through them yourself, big wake up
Yeah.
call. Big wake up
Yeah.
call.
Right. Right.
It makes you scared to even, don't talk to me. I don't want to talk to no boys. I don't want to talk to no
Mm.
boys. Don't see me. Don't talk to me.
Yeah. For real. Real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about, man and woman things.
Mm.
What are the effects of hypersexuality um, on the side of the man as they try to enter into relationships, or are they even entering into relationships because of the hypersexuality and all of this stuff? Like, how does it
Mm.
affect their the present time?
I think that hypersexuality in our community in men, I think it actually disconnects a lot of men from themselves in like emotionally and also from women, because a lot of the times when your mind is so sexualized and so hypersexualized, you stop seeing women as other human beings with experiences. You begin to dehumanize them and you see them as sexual objects, of gratification. You know, that's how the mindset shifts. So a lot of men who are hypersexualized are not having long-term relationships, and that's even pushed. It's not really as popular now to have a marriage as it is to, just one do your
Oh,
thing on the street. Yeah, the Gallicism, I'll come back to the Gallicism, you know, but it's true, it's not as popular again, to have long-term, sustainable, lasting relationships because the hypersexualization, and that's how it affects the minds, of the people. It's very difficult, or it's very challenging, I should say, to heal from those effects. It takes a lot of sitting with yourself. It takes being able to sit with yourself with no escape, without looking to someone else or something else as an escape. Because a lot of the time that's with what this the sexuality is an escape from your emotions, your burdens, the weight, the pain that's in your life, the things that you're dealing with. It's easier, you know, than to sit with. It's easier to just left a woman when she stop give you the gratification and the satisfaction. It's easier to left her than it is to, stay with her and work through that emotional part. You know what I'm saying? That emotional aspect, the weight, the burden of it all, It's easier to just run on to the next year.
that's so true.
So I think that that's some of the long-term effects, that it has. I mean, it messes with your own self-image too. Because when you objectify and dehumanize someone else, you're doing the same thing to yourself. It's deep. The trauma that I leave is very deep. It's very deep, and it takes time to heal.
Also, as a woman here in Jamaica, you find it was like of 10 men, 9 of them very sexual and very hypersexual and everything. And when you talk about the dehumanizing of women, I also see it even when you try to be friends with somebody. It's so crazy because as a woman, first of all, they do not understand that most men do not understand that men and women can be just friends because
Right.
they're always seeing it from a sexualized point of view. Like, oh, if you've been spending enough time with this girl, you must be tapping that, because why else are you? What other reason would you be having to be in her presence, or she in yours?
Right.
Another thing that I see is that, and I've experienced this, if because they almost get what they give, they themselves almost find that they are also dehumanized. So the love that they get is not love, of course. The minute you show them true, real love, just not even love, not romantic love, but just chilling as friends. So many times I've just sat and talked to a guy, and he'd start declaring his love for me, but I'm like, I wasn't even on that level with you. I'm literally just trying to be nice to you, but you never even experienced a woman just being nice to you, because there's this cycle of, due to the hypersexuality of the whole culture, y'all can't be friends, so y'all don't be chilling. So if I'm trying to get with you, it's because I want something from you, probably money, and then you want something from me, the sex, and that's the only interaction that men and women have, especially in this country. So the minute a girl starts being nice to you, the brain can't understand it. It must be,
Right.
you want me.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, I think that a result of that is the lack of the brother and sisterly culture, like just there was a time where we were closer as a people, and this is all around, and I think that now it's hard for people to see you through the lens of family again, and like kinship and real, like, yo, like, me Rachel, me rock with you just because, you know what I'm saying? Like, I respect you just because, you know what I'm saying? And now it's come like, I think through people get so manipulative and conniving, and them always have a plot and a scheme behind everything that they do. It's gotten to a point where, people feel like nothing comes without an agenda. And if you do come with something that's genuine, people feel like it has to elevate and escalate to something else, especially between a man and a woman. But I think also that has to do with the hypersexual culture all around. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Because you cannot model what you don't know and what you've never seen.
Right. Right.
So I guess my last question is, how do we correct this behavior? Like, it's kind of a three-part question. How do you correct it before it gets to the point where, these 6-year-olds are exposed to content? And how do you correct it when you're in it, when they're like teenagers and, starting to trying to get with girls? And how do you correct it when they're later in their life and they might be hardened to gallus? How do you correct that from there at each stage?
All right. I know you said we're running out of time. I'm gonna try to compress this. We're talking about lifelong patterns here. I'm gonna start with the big man. I think that is the hardest at this age because it's been so ingrained and conditioned. That's with anything, it's the hardest to unlearn because it's already been ingrained and conditioned your whole life. Most men are not gonna change because they don't feel there's a reason to change. If you don't feel that there's anyone enforcing a reason of why you feel like you should leave something alone, you're not gonna leave it alone. So I'm gonna leave that there. It can be healed though, I think through inner work, through accountability, through accepting that there's work to do, through looking at your own sexual history of how you were introduced to sex, to how the way that you were exposed to it affects your mind and your psychology today. And as an adult, just taking accountability for how those patterns still play in your life and changing it from there. You know, it's much more that I could say, but I'll leave it there for now. What is it?
Young children, how do we protect our young children in this day and age? Because let's
Right.
talk about Gen
Right.
Alpha.
So as for the children now, I feel like the best way is to limit exposure. You know, as best as you can, as much as you can, and if they are exposed, to check it as early as it happens, you know, to correct the behavior when it starts to linger on that line or it starts to cross that line. You know, I think that the parents, us as the adults, when we catch something, we have to check it, you know, at the door. You know what I mean? I think that that's the best thing that we can do. Yeah.
Yeah. The healing has to happen.
Hmm?
The healing has to happen
That's true.
on all fronts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We have to create a safe environment as much as you can. I think you have to limit screen time, utilize those features that we have, you know, on the technology, you know, to limit certain things. You know, it's passwords, it's pins, it's ways that you can limit certain things. Of course, you can shelter them and protect them from everything, but as much as you can. And if you can't, or when you can't, educate them so that they know certain things. They know that this is not okay. It's not okay to pursue that. You know, at 6 and 7, you should be focused on having fun and, you know, educating yourself, whether through school or other means. You know, just putting their minds in a different direction. You know what I mean? Give them some time to actually be a child, you know what I mean, before they get to that point.
Yeah. So do you have
Yeah,
any more
it's so much.
arguments? Because
Sorry.
that's it for me.
Wait, one more time.
I said, do you have anything in closing? Because that's it for me.
It's so much that I could say, or we might have to do a part 2 just for the healing, you know, because the healing, it requires a lot, you know, but I think the best thing is just being disciplined examples, you know, as adults. We have to be disciplined examples, you know, for the youth, you know, so that they have something that they can follow after, you know, and we have to guide them, you know, we have to check certain behaviors, you know, where them start get too big, you know what I'm saying, for them size, you know. So yeah, that's all I can say. Yeah.
Sankofa, thank you so much for being here. I always love talking to you on the podcast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And thank you for having me. Every time it's a vibe. I look forward to the next episode, you know, and the next season, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Rest
Thanks every time. Yes, sir.
This has been another episode of the Black Man's Redemption. If you have any questions or comments or want to pose a new topic, leave a message for us on one of our podcasting platforms or leave a comment or direct message at our Instagram at Black Man's Redemption. We'd like to thank our guests for their contributions and our listeners for their questions. Now is the time for healing. Let it begin.